Female cleaner insults the man not knowing he is a Mafian boss. You will be surprised with what he did next. This is the kind of story that starts with a misplaced broom and ends with a bullet, or maybe a wedding ring. You'll have to stick around to find out which one wins. It's about a little bit of bad timing, a whole lot of attitude, and the moment a woman found herself staring down a man who could erase her existence with a single phone call, all because she told him his shoes needed polishing. I know you can't wait to hear the story, but before we fully dive in, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button right now. Seriously, you don't want to miss the deep dives and shocking twists we deliver. Now, let's dive into the story. Lena Schuster stood rigid in the hallway of the Grand Regency, the scent of expensive linen and antiseptics swirling around her. It was 4 p.m., 4 minutes after her shift should have ended, and 4 seconds after she'd committed an act of spectacular, career-ending stupidity. The air conditioning hummed, but it didn't touch the slow, cold bones spreading through her veins. Her cotton uniform, the humiliating, pale blue uniform, felt like a straitjacket. She gripped the worn handle of her cleaning trolley, her knuckles white, refusing to move. He stood in the doorway of Penthouse Suite 1802, blocking her path. Alexander Taylor. The name meant nothing to her, a bland placeholder in the hotel's guest registry. To Lena, he was only the quiet one, the entitled guest who had stayed holed up for 3 days, scattering half-eaten room service like confetti and leaving a trail of $5,000 suits on the marble floor. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't even raising his voice. That was the most terrifying part. Alexander was simply leaning against the doorframe, his posture relaxed, a dark, custom-tailored suit draped over a frame that moved with the quiet lethalness of a jungle cat. The silence of the 18th floor, where only the ultra-rich dared to breathe, was now a heavy, oppressive blanket. Lena had been vacuuming the last stretch of plush hall runner, already mentally checked out, thinking about her exhausted bus ride home, when he'd stepped out, a silver briefcase locked to his wrist. She'd yanked the vacuum plug, missing the outlet by a millimeter. A spray of sparks, a tiny, insignificant firework show, had burst from the wall. "Look out, mate," she'd snapped, her Brooklyn accent sharp and unforgiving. "Try to pay attention, here? You almost made me blow a fuse. Can you move? I need to finish this before the supervisor has a meltdown, and unlike you, I actually need this job to, eat." He hadn't flinched. He hadn't even looked at the sparking wall socket. Alexander Taylor's eyes, the color of old ice, were locked on her. Not with anger, but with an unsettling, clinical assessment, like a scientist viewing a curious specimen under a microscope. "You believe I don't pay attention?" Alexander's voice was a low rumble, the kind that vibrates through the floor, not the air. Lena felt the hot sting of shame, then the familiar surge of righteous fury that had gotten her fired from 3 jobs already. She was tired, she was underpaid, and she wasn't going to be patronized by some silver-spoon tourist. She dropped her broom with a clatter. "I believe that you walk around like the world is an obstacle course designed just for you to ignore. Look at your own shoes," she challenged, gesturing with a hand that was raw and chapped from bleach. "They're beautiful leather, probably cost more than my rent, and they're scuffed." "Scuffed? You have enough money to buy this entire hotel, but you can't manage a moment of concentration or common courtesy. You think being rich means you can be sloppy." She had called a notorious man, a ghost in the criminal underworld, sloppy. A muscle twitched in his jaw. For a heart-stopping second, Lena thought he would slap her, or worse. The casual weight of his hand on the doorframe felt like a threat. But then, an astonishing thing happened. The corner of his mouth lifted in a slow, chilling smile. It was predatory, yet utterly captivated. "Sloppy," he echoed, his eyes never leaving hers. He stepped closer, and the proximity was like a punch to the gut. The only scent she could detect was a whisper of expensive, unfamiliar cologne and something metallic, maybe blood, maybe just the idea of danger. "That's an interesting critique. Most people just smile and ask for a tip." "I'm not most people," Lena retorted, her voice shaking despite her best effort to keep it steady. "I have a name. It's Lena, and my tip is that you need to watch where you're going." He didn't acknowledge her name. He just absorbed her, head to toe. "You have a fire in you, Lena Schuster," Alexander murmured, the slight emphasis on her last name sending a fresh jolt of fear through her. How did he know her last name? She hadn't told him. A significant, Blazing fire. Do you know, I was about to leave this building, fly to the other side of the world, and conclude some rather messy business. He paused, stepping fully out of the suite, the shadows of the hallway clinging to him. He placed a hand on the silver briefcase, his fingers tracing the line of the lock. But now, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that held the weight of a decree. Now I'm curious. You've challenged my attention. You've called me sloppy. Tell me, Lena, what happens to someone in my world when they forget to pay attention to the details? And, more importantly, what happens to the people who point out the mistake? The question hung in the air, a silken noose tightening around her throat. This was no ordinary hotel guest. The way he looked at her was the way a master hunter looks at a prized, unpredictable catch. She had walked straight into a cage she didn't know existed. The vacuum cleaner remained on its side, an abandoned metallic carcass in the silent hallway. Lena didn't move it. Her heart was hammering out a frantic, irregular rhythm against her ribs. She was still standing in the wake of Alexander Taylor's dangerous smile, a smile that didn't promise death, but something far more unnerving, attention. He had vanished back into penthouse 1802. No threats, no raised voice, no call to security. Just that question, what happens to the people who point out the mistake? Lena's deepest fear wasn't poverty, she was already intimately acquainted with that. Her fear was invisibility. It was the crushing certainty that she could work herself to dust, be polite, be quiet, and still be nothing more than a ghost in a blue uniform. Her efforts erased the moment a wealthy man walked past. Her furious outburst hadn't been an act of rebellion, it was a desperate, primal scream for acknowledgement. But Alexander Taylor had not only acknowledged her, he had seen the fire inside her. And now, she felt dangerously visible. She finally pushed the trolley, the squeak of a loose wheel a screech in the cavernous silence. She had 10 minutes left when her supervisor, a slick man named David, materialized, his face a mask of stressed-out relief. Lena, where have you been? And what is this? David gestured vaguely at the scuff marks on the wall near the faulty socket. Never mind. Just clean it. And listen, I need you to do something for me. For the rest of the week, I want you reassigned. You're to handle Penthouse 1802 exclusively. Lena froze. You want me to clean his suite? After I just spoke my mind to him. David leaned in, his voice dropping to a nervous whisper. He requested you. Not you specifically, but the room service logs noted you were the one who spoke to him about the scuffed shoes and the general sloppiness. He left a note, send the cleaner with the spine. He also authorized an immediate triple salary bonus if you're his sole attendant until checkout. The triple bonus hit Lena like a physical blow. It was the price of 6 months of their current life, materialized out of thin air. It was a week's rent for her small apartment in Astoria, and enough seed money to finally purchase the used Hobart mixer she needed. Lena's greatest desire wasn't just a simple life, it was the establishment of Schuster's Sweet Surrender, a tiny bakery filled with the honeyed scent of her grandmother's recipes. It was her escape plan, the ticket to exchanging the bleach bottle for a rolling pin. She envisioned the sign, the soft yellow light, the pride in her younger sister's eyes. Her younger sister, Stella Schuster, was the heart she carried outside her own body. At 18, Stella was the picture of fragile resilience, studying on a partial scholarship and working late shifts to help pay bills. Stella was the reason Lena endured the late nights, the condescending glances, and the ache in her back. She had promised Stella a life free from the constant shadow of debt. If Lena got fired, that promise dissolved. If she took the triple bonus, they were halfway to the mixer. I'll do it, Lena said, the words tasting like ash and ambition. She wasn't sure if she was walking into a trap or a miracle, but either way, she couldn't afford to walk away from the money. The fear of Alexander Taylor was now competing directly with the fear of failure, and the latter, for Lena, was the true terror. Meanwhile, on the floor below, in a room that was utilitarian and completely devoid of the Grand Regency's opulence, Alexander Taylor was no longer Alexander Taylor, the quiet tourist. He was a presence, formidable and still. He sat at a folding table, the silver briefcase from the hallway open before him. It didn't contain money or weapons, but rather encrypted satellite phones and schematics of the hotel's lower-level security systems. His actual last name was irrelevant in this world, he was known simply as Alexandros, or by the title that preceded it, Illinois Capo. He had come to the Grand Regency not for a holiday, but to catch a ghost. A highly trusted member of his inner circle, someone he considered family, had been siphoning millions from the organization's legitimate shipping businesses. This betrayal, this sloppiness, was intolerable. Alexander's deepest motivation was order. He believed that chaos was the true enemy of power. His world, a brutal tapestry of loyalty, fear, and finance, was built on predictable calculations. The man he was hunting, a lieutenant named Wills Schuster, no relation to Lena, was due to meet a rival faction on the hotel's premises tonight, solidifying his defection. Alexander's plan was meticulous: observe, confirm, and execute a silent, surgical removal of the cancer from his organization. His fear wasn't assassination, he accepted that as a cost of business. His fear was the infection of sentiment, allowing personal feelings to compromise the absolute necessity of the organization's survival. A tall, impeccably dressed woman with a severe expression and a silent manner entered the room. This was Isabel Schuster, Alexander's chief strategist and head of security. She carried the weight of every secret the organization held. "The perimeter is secure, Alexandros," Isabel reported, her voice flat. "The target is locked in on the 16th floor. He's nervous. He just ordered a steak, well done." A sign of panic. Alexander nodded, his eyes distant. Wills was always weak when he was nervous. "Did you confirm the movements of the cleaner?" Lena Schuster. Isabel glanced at a digital screen displaying Lena's employee profile, her expression unreadable. "Confirmed." She accepted the reassignment. "Her background is clean. No priors. No debts beyond standard student loans and housing. Her only attachment is a younger sister, Stella. She dreams of opening a bakery." "A bakery," Alexander repeated, a flicker of something unreadable, not amusement, but a strange recognition, in his eyes. The woman with the fire wanted to make sweet things. Her insolence was noted, Alexandros. "I recommend a simple threat to ensure compliance," Isabel suggested clinically. Alexander waved a dismissive hand. "No. She showed me something genuine. Everyone else in this building, including Wills, is wearing a mask, trading on lies. She told me the truth, that I was sloppy. It was reckless, yes, but authentic. I want to see how that authenticity fares in close proximity to genuine danger." He stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the concrete sprawl of the city that was unknowingly under his thumb. "Order Isabel, monitor her movements. Ensure she is in no immediate, accidental danger. If she causes trouble, handle it quietly. If she is useful, protect her. I need a clean sight line into her truth. It's a valuable distraction from the poison in my own house." Alexander looked down at his shoes. They were indeed scuffed. He bent down, picked up a polishing cloth from the hotel amenity kit, a ridiculous, simple, yet deeply intentional act, and began rubbing the leather. He was testing her, but perhaps, more dangerously, he was testing himself. He had always believed that the moment you stopped paying attention to the small details was the moment your empire began to crumble. Lena had called him on it. What he didn't realize was that by paying attention to her, he was introducing the greatest element of chaos his ordered world had ever faced. He had kept her close, not as a target, but as a bizarre, human talisman, an observer of his own meticulousness. He thought he was watching her, but he was creating the perfect scenario for their worlds to collide, setting the stage for the true, inevitable twist. The triple bonus burned a hole in Lena's resolve. By the third day of her exclusive cleaning duty for Penthouse 1802, the initial fear had dulled into a focused, almost clinical determination. The suite was immaculate, its luxury a stark, beautiful contrast to her cramped, familiar struggle. Alexander Taylor, the quiet one, was an unsettling anomaly. He kept to a precise, almost robotic schedule, usually leaving the suite exactly at 9 a.m. and returning at 6 p.m. The silver briefcase never left his side. Lena had adopted a new strategy: absolute invisibility. She moved with the silent efficiency of a seasoned professional, polishing the scuffed leather of his shoes with an almost defiant meticulousness and ensuring the room was sterilized of any trace of her presence before the clock hit 5. She hadn't exchanged another word with him, and the silence was its own kind of tension, a coiled spring waiting to snap. Her concentration on the work was so intense, she almost missed the detail that brought the first major plot twist crashing down on her life. It was 5:58 p.m., 2 minutes before her official checkout time. She was wiping down the glass tabletop in the living area when she noticed the hotel's official room service tray resting on a side table. It was pristine, untouched. But underneath the folded napkin, a small, laminated hotel card, a room key, was visible. It wasn't the standard gold-colored card for the high roller suites. This one was black, marked Maintenance Access, Level -2. Lena's hand paused, the microfiber cloth still. Level -2 was the rarely used, semi-abandoned subbasement. No guest had any business down there. Only engineering and security had clearance. Why would Alexander Taylor have a key to the utility tunnels? The detail was too precise, too sloppy for him to have left accidentally. A new, colder kind of fear coiled in her gut. This wasn't just arrogance, this was something illicit. At that exact moment, the electronic lock of the main door hissed open. Alexander Taylor had returned 2 minutes early. Lena was caught, mid-contemplation, staring at the black key card. Her mind screamed run, but her feet were rooted to the floor. She scooped up the key, intending to slide it into her pocket, but Alexander was already there, his dark silhouette filling the doorway, his eyes sweeping the room, cataloging every single piece of evidence, including her frozen posture. He was wearing a different, darker suit, and the air of relaxed menace she'd initially observed was replaced by an aggressive, sharp focus. He didn't look tired, he looked dangerous. "Miss Schuster," he said, the name a cold formality. "You're still here." "I was finishing up, Mr. Taylor," Lena managed, trying to sound breezy and professional. Her attempt at hiding the card failed spectacularly, her hand was shaking too violently. His gaze dropped to her hand. He didn't ask what she was holding. He didn't need to. "I believe you have something that doesn't belong to you." The accusation was calm, which only intensified the panic. Lena knew she couldn't lie. Her strength was her blunt honesty. She pulled her hand back and held the black card out. "This was under the napkin. I was going to turn it in. It's a maintenance key to level -2. Alexander didn't take it. He simply moved into the room, walking past her. Every muscle in his body was tight. "And what were your intentions regarding level -2? "None," she whispered. "I don't even know what's down there." He stopped, turning slowly. The smile was gone. The curiosity was extinguished. What replaced it was the hard, chilling assessment of a judge looking at a guilty verdict. "Lena, I told you I value your attention to detail. But there are some details that, once observed, can't be unseen. And they carry a cost." Before Lena could formulate a protest or an apology, the intercom near the bar buzzed sharply, startling them both. Alexander strode over and pressed the answer button without hesitation. A man's voice, frantic and muffled, filtered into the opulent suite. "Alexandros. We have a problem. Will's missed the extraction window. He's not on the 16th floor. Security footage shows him heading to the loading docks. He's moving the assets out now." The man on the intercom used the name Alexandros, not Taylor. Assets. Extraction. Loading docks. Lena's breath hitched. Her triple bonus, her bakery dream, her stupid, angry moment in the hallway, it all snapped into horrifying focus. Alexander wasn't a traveler. He was a criminal. A big one. Alexander's eyes narrowed, the ice deepening to flint. He didn't address the intercom. He addressed Lena. "You've just been granted a front row seat to the consequences of carelessness. Not mine, but Will's." He grabbed a light, sleek jacket draped over a chair and pulled it on. "Will's Schuster is not my problem," Lena shot back, her voice shaking but firm. "I don't know who he is. I'm going home." "Oh, you absolutely know him," Alexander stated, a grim edge to his voice. He glanced at the maintenance key card still clutched in her hand. "The loading docks are connected to level -2. That key will get you there silently." He reached out, and for the first time, their skin brushed, his fingers, cool and strong, closed around her wrist, the touch electrifying, terrifying. "Will's is taking something that will damage my legitimate operations. I need to intercept him, but my people are scattered. I need to move quickly, and I need a distraction." He pulled a small, heavy object from the inner pocket of his jacket. It was a pistol, black and professional. He tossed it, not to her, but onto the low, circular coffee table. It skittered to a stop right next to the forgotten maintenance key. The asset is in 2 crates. He'll need a vehicle. The loading dock tunnel runs parallel to the hotel's main delivery route, Alexander said, his voice now a series of rapid-fire orders. You, Lena Schuster, are now part of my plan. Take the key. Head to level -2. I need you to create a diversion. Pull the fire alarm near the main elevator bank on that level. It'll buy me 5 minutes to secure Wills. 5 minutes is all you have to stay alive. Lena stared at the pistol, then at the black key, then up at Alexander, whose face was a study in absolute, cold command. Her life, once mundane and predictable, had just been hijacked by the Mafia, all because she had a spine. And if I refuse, she whispered, tasting the metallic tang of fear. Alexander looked directly into her eyes, and there was a flicker of something deeply unsettling, not malice, but absolute certainty. Then you won't be around to tell anyone what you overheard. I'm offering you a choice, Lena, complicity, or oblivion. He turned, grabbing the silver briefcase and heading for a private exit door Lena hadn't even noticed before, a door that likely bypassed the main lobby entirely. One more thing, Lena, he called back, just before slipping through the door. If you see a man in a navy suit, carrying 2 brown boxes, don't look him in the eye. If he asks you about the alarm, tell him I sent you. Tell him the cleaner is taking out the trash. He was gone. Lena was alone, standing between a triple salary and a loaded weapon. The frantic, muffled voice from the intercom still echoed in her memory, Alexandros. The weight of the black key card felt like a death sentence. She had just been plunged into a dangerous game of loyalty and betrayal, not as an observer, but as a terrified, reluctant player. The man she insulted was indeed a Mafia boss. And now, to save her life and perhaps, somehow, her future, she had to become his accomplice. Could a simple cleaner survive 5 minutes in the underbelly of a crime organization, or was this where her fire finally burned out? The cold steel of the abandoned pistol on the coffee table felt like a physical weight in the room, heavier than the silver briefcase Alexander had just taken. Lena didn't touch it. She didn't need the gun, she already had the key. Complicity, or oblivion. The choice was a terrifying clarity. To refuse was to confirm Alexander's judgment that she was a loose end to be snipped. To comply was to step off a cliff. She snatched up the black maintenance access key, the key to her temporary survival, and bolted for the private service elevator, the one reserved for staff. Her heart pounded a frantic drumbeat against the silence of the luxury floor. She didn't look back at the opulence of penthouse 1802, she only looked ahead to the terrifying, concrete unknown of level -2. The service elevator descended with an agonizing slowness, the descent a metaphor for her fall from respectable if humble existence into the criminal underworld. The polished steel of the cabin mirrored her panicked face. She was a cleaner, not a criminal, not a spy. Yet, she found a strange, desperate strength born of necessity. She had to survive for Stella, for the bakery. She had to believe that 5 minutes of controlled chaos was her payment for freedom. When the elevator doors shuddered open onto level -2, Lena was met with a blast of stale air, the smell of dust, mildew, and distant diesel fumes. The contrast to the pristine upper floors was jarring. This was the raw, working core of the hotel, a maze of low ceilings, exposed pipes, and fluorescent lights that flickered with a persistent, unnerving hum. She found the main elevator bank just around a bend, a large red fire alarm box mounted beside it. Her hand hovered, sweat slicking her palm. This was the point of no return. Suddenly, a voice, harsh and agitated, echoed from the far end of the narrow corridor, near the loading docks. I told you, Wills. We need the van. He'll find us if we try the main street. Lena flattened herself against the cold concrete wall, her breath held tight. It was 2 men, their voices muffled by the sheer volume of boxes and equipment stacked haphazardly around the dock entrance. Wills. The target. The traitor. She risked a peek. Wills Schuster, a name that now carried a sinister echo to her own, was a nervous wreck, his navy suit rumpled, his face pale. He was arguing furiously with another man, a massive, hulking figure with a cruel, familiar scar across his neck. They were standing near two large, heavy wooden crates marked with cryptic shipping codes. The assets. Lena knew she had to pull the alarm now. But as she reached for the lever, Wills gestured wildly toward a set of heavy fire doors near her location. The backup plan. Get the boxes through the service tunnel to the north exit. The rival crew is meeting us there. Hurry, before Alexandros gets here. Wills hissed. The service tunnel. The one connected to level -2, and the one her key could access. Alexander hadn't just wanted a diversion, he'd wanted her in the exact location to intercept Wills's second move. He hadn't been sloppy at all. He had calculated every variable, including the possibility that Wills would change his exit strategy. Lena was a pawn in an impossibly complex game of chess. She realized the fire alarm was now useless. If Wills moved the assets into the tunnels, Alexander would miss them. She had to get ahead of them. Ignoring the terror, Lena silently slipped through the dimly lit maintenance corridors, moving with the innate stealth of someone used to navigating back hallways unnoticed. She found a heavy steel door, used the black key, which clicked instantly, validating Alexander's trust in her to carry out the task, and entered the narrow service tunnel. The air here was drier, the acoustics sharp. She could hear the heavy thud of the crates being dragged into the tunnel behind her. Lena was sprinting when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something compelled her to answer. Yes, she whispered, breathless. If you pulled the alarm, I apologize for the noise. Alexander's low voice cut through the line, calm and chillingly close. I didn't, she hissed back. Your target is using the service tunnel. They have the crates and are heading for the north exit. A beat of silence. Smart. I should have accounted for his panic. Well done, Lena. That's detail. Tell me the coordinates. She gave him the tunnel number, a series of faded, stenciled numbers on the wall. The urgency in her voice was real, not manufactured, and she could feel the adrenaline overriding the panic. Listen to me. They can't know you're working for me. You are still the cleaner. I need you to create a choke point. A what? I don't have a weapon, Alexander. You don't need one. You have a trolley, don't you? Somewhere close? Find it. Block the passage. Make it look like an accident. Spill something. Buy me 2 minutes. Not 5. 2. His voice was a lifeline, but one made of razor wire. And what happens after 2 minutes? Lena demanded, running full tilt past a junction that smelled sharply of chemicals. After 2 minutes, you run. You run in the opposite direction, toward the main level -2 staircase. Don't stop for anything. And Lena, keep the phone on. He disconnected. She was now officially on a mission, a cleanup job of a truly illegal kind. She found an abandoned maintenance closet, and against all odds, her standard-issue, beat-up cleaning trolley was parked inside, ready to be her secret weapon. She slammed the trolley into the tunnel wall, spilling a bucket of foul, soapy water across the concrete floor just as Wills and his massive accomplice rounded the bend. Wills skidded to a stop, his eyes wide, his panic replaced by blinding rage. What the hell are you doing, you idiot? Get that thing out of the way. Now. Lena stood her ground, hands braced against the trolley, her legs shaking but her voice steady. She remembered Alexander's instruction, tell him I sent you. Tell him the cleaner is taking out the trash. Sorry, sir, Lena said, channeling all the exhaustion and annoyance of her real job into her tone. Hazard. Chemical spill. You can't pass here for 5 minutes. I'm cleaning it up. I was told to put a stop to anyone trying to get through. Wills laughed, a high, hysterical sound. By who? The maid supervisor? Move, or I'll move you. His accomplice, the scarred mountain of a man, started to step around the crates, but Lena met his gaze, and saw a flicker of hesitation. The man looked at the slick, soapy water, then back at the hysterical Wills. He was a professional, and he recognized a genuine, unavoidable obstacle. Boss, it's too tight. If we slip on that, the boxes are going in the river, the thug muttered. We don't have 5 minutes. Wills screamed, grabbing Lena by the wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. You're ruining everything. I'll buy you out of that miserable uniform for life, just move the trolley. Lena yanked her arm back. I was told to secure the passage. If you have a problem, take it up with Alexander. The name hit Wills like a physical blow. His face went ashen. He dropped his gaze to the floor. The thug's eyes narrowed on Lena, the surprise palpable. Lena pressed her advantage, leaning in, her voice low and furious. I was told the cleaner is taking out the trash. And you, Wills, look a lot like trash to me. She saw a flash of understanding and recognition in Wills's eyes. Not of her, but of Alexander's dark sense of humor and meticulousness. Alexander wasn't just catching Wills, he was playing with him, using a hotel cleaner to deliver the final, humiliating message. The sound of rapid footsteps echoed from the main tunnel, not the private access Alexander had taken. A split second later, 3 men in dark tactical gear burst into the hallway, heading straight for them. False clue, red herring, they weren't Alexander's men. They were the rival faction Wills was meeting. Wills. The package, one of the men yelled. This was the obstacle that tested the burgeoning relationship. Lena's diversion had worked, but it had brought the wrong kind of attention. She had drawn 2 criminal organizations to her position. Get her. Wills shrieked, pointing at Lena. She's Alexander's woman. She called him. The moment the men turned toward her, Alexander's phone buzzed sharply in her hand. A text message, short and precise, run. Now. Lena didn't hesitate. She shoved the trolley hard into Wills's legs, sending him sprawling into the water slick, and sprinted down the narrow tunnel as fast as her aching legs would carry her, leaving the 2 factions to collide in the darkness over the crates. The sounds of a muffled, violent scuffle, the clack of metal on metal, a sickening thud, chased her through the concrete labyrinth. She realized, even as panic flooded her system, that Alexander hadn't used her, he had trusted her. He had given her a key, a target, and a lifeline, and she had delivered. But now, she was running from 2 powerful groups, and the only person who knew she was alive was a Mafia boss. Lena burst out of the tunnel and onto the main level -2 staircase, her lungs burning, the phone gripped tight in her sweaty hand. Her world was now officially fused with his. Alexander Taylor's plan had succeeded, but he had just dragged his unlikely romantic interest, the fiery cleaner, right into the eye of his storm. The growing attraction, born not of soft words but of shied, brutal efficiency, was now undeniable. She was scared, yes, but she was also alive, and for the first time in years, she felt the thrill of being truly powerful. But as she reached the first landing, Alexander's voice came through the open phone line, no longer calm, but edged with genuine concern. Lena. Stop. Stop moving. My car is waiting for you in the loading zone. Get in. They know your face now. You can't go home. The realization hit her like a sledgehammer. She wasn't just an accomplice, she was a witness, a link, and a new target. Her desire to escape was now an impossible dream, replaced by the immediate, terrifying need for protection. And the only man who could provide that protection was the one who had put her in danger. Lena's legs burned with effort and terror, pounding up the cold stone of the level -2 staircase. The echoes of the scuffle, a sickening cocktail of shouts, shattering wood, and muffled impacts, faded as she climbed. She reached the staff landing on the main floor, chest heaving, her blue uniform soaked with sweat and grime, the black key still hot in her hand. Alexander's car, a black, nondescript sedan, was idling at the loading zone entrance, its tinted windows sliding down just as she buzzed through the emergency exit. She dove into the back seat without a second thought, slamming the door shut. Go. Drive, she gasped, her voice raw. The driver, a stocky man with the impenetrable silence of a trained operative, pulled out smoothly, merging instantly into the night traffic. Lena didn't look back at the Grand Regency. It was no longer a hotel, it was the site of her violent baptism. She pulled Alexander's phone away from her ear, realizing he was still on the line, listening to her ragged breathing. You're safe, Alexander's voice came through the speaker, calmer now, the tension replaced by a familiar, controlled tone. The assets are secure. Wills is contained. You were exceptional, Lena. Exceptional? I just committed a felony. Lena shot back, the adrenaline turning into furious panic. I blocked an escape, caused a brawl between criminals, and now I'm running from people who know my name and face. I can't go home, Alexander. I can't see Stella. You told me I had a choice, but you stripped it away the moment I overheard that call. I gave you the choice to live, Alexander corrected, his voice hardening slightly. A choice Wills Schuster no longer has. You're coming with me. We are going to a secure location. You need to change, clean up, and we need to talk about what you saw and heard. Lena leaned her head against the cool glass of the window, tears of exhaustion blurring the streetlights. She was a cleaner who had just been scooped up by the city's Shadow King. She was terrified, but a strange, fierce pride flickered alongside the fear. She had been exceptional. She had survived. The car didn't stop at a warehouse or a hidden compound. It pulled up to a discreet, beautifully manicured brownstone in a quiet, affluent neighborhood. This was not a fortress, it was a home. Alexander met her inside, stepping out from the shadows of the expansive foyer. He wasn't wearing the suit jacket he'd had on in the penthouse. He was in a simple, dark cashmere sweater, and he looked younger, less untouchable. He held a glass of amber liquid, but his posture was still alert, coiled. "This is temporary," Alexander said, gesturing toward a marble staircase. "Go up. The third door. There's clean clothing, a shower. My aide, Isabel, will be here shortly to assess the situation. But first, we will talk. Alone." Lena didn't trust him, but she was too exhausted to fight. When she descended 30 minutes later, wearing a pair of dark, expensive jeans and a soft cotton shirt, clothes that fit her perfectly, a small, unnerving detail, she found Alexander waiting in a dimly lit study. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled not with ledgers, but with first editions and classical literature. The air smelled of old leather and wood smoke. He poured her a glass of cool water and handed it to her. For a moment, they were just two people sharing a quiet space, the chaos of level -2 a distant nightmare. "Thank you," she said simply, drinking deep. "Lena, let's dispense with the pleasantries. Your identity is compromised. You can't go back to the hotel, and you certainly can't go back to your apartment," Alexander stated, leaning forward, his gaze intense. "The men Wills was meeting, they're not police. They are a rival operation, and they now believe you are my confidant, someone who knows the location of the assets and the specifics of Wills's betrayal. You are safer with me." "Safer?" Lena scoffed, planting her hands on the mahogany desk. "You're telling me that to survive your world, I have to stay in your world?" "Yes," he admitted, without a trace of guilt. "And you've proven you have the instincts to survive it. You didn't pull the alarm, you intercepted the change of plans. That's not a cleaner, Lena. That's a strategist." Lena felt a confusing mix of fury and respect. He was dangerous, but he was also the first person who had ever truly seen her intelligence, not just her labor. The triple bonus, the money for the mixer. She trailed off, the bakery dream feeling impossibly fragile now. Alexander stood, walking around the desk toward her. His proximity was electrifying, a shade voltage of danger and sudden, undeniable attraction. "The money is yours. 10 times over," he promised, his voice low. "But you cannot disappear. Not yet. I need you to understand one thing. Wills's betrayal wasn't just about money. It was about an ancient secret, a ledger detailing the movements of my organization's entire legitimate infrastructure. That information in the wrong hands means war, global exposure, and a threat to everyone under my protection." He stopped directly in front of her. The tension in the room was now palpable, no longer just fear, but a rising, powerful tide of shared vulnerability. "Tell me about your sister, Stella," Alexander requested, shifting the conversation abruptly. Lena was taken aback, but the question was sincere, a crack in his icy armor. She swallowed and started talking, telling him about Stella's scholarship, her hopes, her quiet strength, and the little yellow note cards where Lena kept her grandmother's bakery recipes. Alexander listened, his expression softening imperceptibly. "Order, Lena, is not always about control. Sometimes it's about protection. Your desire for the bakery, for Stella's safety, that is your order. My world is complex, but the motivation is the same. I want to build something strong enough to shield those I care about." The revelation of this shared core motivation, the fierce desire to build and protect, created a deep, powerful connection between them, a foundation for the burgeoning romance. Lena saw beyond the Mafia boss to a man driven by a brutal, protective instinct. Alexander saw beyond the cleaner to a woman with the courage of a lioness protecting her future. He reached out, his hand gently tracing a smudge of grime on her cheekbone. It was an intimate, tender gesture in a world of violence. Lena instinctively leaned into the touch. I didn't keep you close because you insulted me, Lena. I kept you close because I am searching for a fundamental truth that has been corrupted in my world. Loyalty, Alexander murmured, his voice husky. He led her to a concealed panel in the wall. It slid open to reveal a heavily locked, steel safe. He worked the combination with practiced ease. When the heavy door swung open, it revealed not cash or weapons, but a single, ancient-looking leather-bound book, the infamous ledger. The betrayal of Wills was supposed to be the game-changer, Alexander said, pulling the book out. But the real game-changer is you. Lena stared at the ledger, then at Alexander, confusion clouding her eyes. Wills Schuster, Alexander continued, his eyes locked on the book, is not his actual name. His real name is Ethan Taylor. He is my half-brother. The revelation landed with the force of an explosion. Lena's entire understanding of the past 3 days, the panic, the pursuit, the assets, shifted violently. Alexander wasn't just hunting a traitor, he was hunting his own blood. And the ultimate secret. Alexander turned, placing the ledger in her hands. It was heavy, worn, and smelled faintly of sea salt. The greatest betrayal was not Will's Ethan trying to sell this to rivals. It was what he told me moments before I contained him. He didn't reveal it to buy his freedom, he revealed it out of spite. Alexander paused, letting the silence ratchet up the tension to an unbearable peak. The rival faction, the men you ran from, were led by Wills's contact, a man named Victor Vega, Alexander revealed. Wills confessed that Victor had already compromised one of my most trusted strategists, someone I rely on every single hour of every single day. Wills told me the compromise was not through money, but through leverage. A threat. Lena clutched the ledger, her mind racing. Who? Who betrayed you? Alexander's eyes, fixed on a spot just over her shoulder, were cold, empty voids. The passion and protective warmth vanished, replaced by a terrible, devastating finality. The person who set up my communication lines, who arranged the secure perimeter, who knew where I was, who knew the details of the Wills Schuster operation. The only person who could have led Victor Vega's men right to level -2, right as you were making your move. He looked directly at Lena, delivering the final, crushing blow. The deepest betrayal comes not from your enemy, Lena, but from those you call family. The spy is Isabel Schuster. Isabel, the quiet, precise chief strategist. Isabel, who bore the same last name as Lena, an icy coincidence that suddenly felt sinister. Isabel, who was due to arrive any moment to assess the situation. Lena's heart seized. She wasn't just in danger from Wills's rivals, she was now trapped in a house with the enemy, the person Alexander was relying on to keep them safe. And she had just been handed the legendary Taylor ledger, the key to both Alexander's downfall and her own sudden power. The stakes were no longer just about survival, they were about a desperate, silent war waged under Alexander's own roof. The cold reality of the betrayal hit Lena with sickening force. Isabel Schuster. The chief strategist, the one Alexander trusted with his life and the secrets of his empire. The woman who bore her own last name, a cruel twist of fate that felt like a mockery. Lena clutched the heavy, ancient ledger to her chest, the weight of the book now feeling like the weight of the entire Taylor organization's future. Alexander, the capo who prided himself on meticulous detail, stared at the wall safe, his expression a mask of devastated, blinding rage. He had prepared for a rival attack, for a family betrayal, but he hadn't prepared for the cold, calculated treachery of his closest advisor. Isabel, Alexander finally ground out, his voice low and vibrating with a dangerous intensity that surpassed anything Lena had witnessed before. She knew the extraction points, the backup plan, the full scope of Wills's failure. She was the one who was supposed to monitor the security sweep. She led Victor Vega to us. Lena took a tentative step toward him. She's coming here, Alexander. You said she was due to arrive to assess the situation. She's walking into an ambush she set up. Alexander finally looked at her, and the ice in his eyes had been replaced by a raw, burning vulnerability. His fear wasn't of losing power, it was the chilling realization of how close he'd come to losing everything because of sentiment. He had allowed himself to trust. She won't come alone, he stated, moving instantly from shock to calculation. If Will's told her he failed, she knows I'm on to her. She's coming here to eliminate the threat, me, and anyone I brought back with me. And you, Lena, are now the biggest threat she never accounted for. She knows you were at level -2. She knows you were my unexpected eyes. He snatched his jacket from the chair, the movement sharp and decisive. I have contingency plans for every rival, but not for an immediate, tactical strike on my own home. My men are still scattered, cleaning up the mess at the Grand Regency. We are exposed. Lena's deepest fear resurfaced, the loss of control, the total inability to protect her one connection to normalcy, Stella. Stella, Lena whispered, her voice tight with panic. Isabel knows my profile. She knows I have a sister, where she works, where she lives. If Isabel thinks I have this ledger. Alexander's face hardened. He understood the threat immediately. The enemy wasn't just after the ledger, they were after leverage, and Stella was the perfect, innocent target. The car that brought you here is still outside, Alexander said, grabbing a set of keys and tossing them to her. Lena, you have to leave. Now. No, Lena insisted, clutching the ledger tighter. I'm not leaving you with that kind of exposure, and I'm not leaving Stella undefended. This book is the prize. If I leave with the ledger, I become the primary target. That buys you time to secure your men and move to a fallback location. I'll divert Isabel away from this house. Alexander strode toward her, his movements radiating fierce, frustrated passion. He closed the distance between them, cupping her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his gaze. You don't understand the game, Lena. You're a pawn who thinks she's a queen, he pleaded, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. They won't just take you, they will use you to get the book, and then they will discard you. I can protect you here. But if you're out there, in the open, with that, he gestured to the ledger. I understand completely, Lena countered, her eyes blazing with determination. This was her moment of ultimate defiance and commitment. She wasn't running from him, she was protecting him. You need order. I am your chaos. And right now, chaos is your best defense. I take the threat away from your location, and I force Isabel to focus on me, not you. I will draw the fire. The moment was charged with a tension that was both desperate and deeply romantic. They were communicating on a level that bypassed words, a primal understanding of sacrifice and protection. Where will you go? He asked, his voice rough with defeat and a reluctant admiration. Somewhere they won't think to look. Somewhere public, exposed, where I can see them coming. And I need to know Stella is safe first. Alexander pulled her against his chest in a quick, fierce embrace, a profound exchange of physical and emotional intimacy under duress. It was a promise, a desperate prayer, and a temporary goodbye all rolled into one. I will send a team immediately for Stella. They are the best, completely clean, loyal only to me. They will extract her and take her to the one place in this city Isabel can't touch. I promise you this, Lena. I will not fail her. But you must hold that ledger. It is the only thing keeping you alive. Lena pulled away, already calculating. She grabbed the car keys. I need a way to communicate with your men, a secure channel to confirm Stella's safety. Alexander handed her a plain, prepaid burner phone from his desk drawer. One channel. Only for Stella's location confirmation. Don't use it for anything else. If you are cornered, use the distress signal, it's 3 quick rings. It tells me to stop hunting Isabel and focus only on your extraction. The plan was a suicide mission based entirely on the hope that Alexander could clean up his mess faster than Isabel could catch her. Lena didn't look back. She ran out, the ledger tucked into the expensive cotton shirt, the book surprisingly comfortable against her skin. She raced the sedan through the night streets, but she didn't head for an escape route. She drove toward the only place she felt any sense of belonging outside of Stella, the Blue Bird Cafe, her grandmother's former bakery, now a boarded-up, abandoned dream in a forgotten corner of Queens. She knew she couldn't hide there, but she needed a moment of grounding before the inevitable confrontation. As she drove, she made the critical, heartbreaking phone call to Stella. Stella, listen to me, and don't ask any questions. I love you. You need to pack a bag right now, only the essentials. Don't tell anyone. A friend is coming for you. His name is Liam. He's wearing a grey suit. Go with him, no matter what. He'll take you somewhere safe. I promise I'll call you as soon as I can. This is the hardest thing I've ever had to ask you, but you must trust me. Do you hear me, Stella? Stella's panicked, tearful voice on the other end was Lena's breaking point. Lena, what's going on? Where are you? Are you in trouble? I'm fine. Just starting a new job, kid. A big one. This is what buys the Hobart mixer, remember? Just go with Liam. Tell him I said sugar and dust. She hung up, her vision blurring. She had pushed her beloved sister into the arms of a Mafia security detail, threatening their connection to save their lives. The fear of what Alexander's world would do to Stella was a crushing weight in her chest. Lena arrived at the dilapidated cafe, the smell of burnt sugar and old dreams clinging to the abandoned brickwork. She parked the sedan on the corner and stepped out, the ledger still hidden. She was visible, vulnerable, and absolutely alone. The streetlights cast long, broken shadows. She didn't have to wait long. A car, identical to Alexander's, a sleek, dark sedan, pulled up silently 40 feet away. The back door opened, and Isabel Schuster emerged. She was impeccable, cold, and utterly terrifying. She carried no visible weapon, only an air of lethal, calculated calm. Lena Schuster, Isabel called out, her voice slicing through the quiet night. The cleaner. I should have known Alexandros would find a way to make a mess of his own operation. Where is the ledger? Lena knew this was the end. Her situation was hopeless. Isabel was professional, calm, and likely had snipers positioned on the rooftops. Lena had nothing but her wit and a bulky old book. You're the sloppy one, Isabel, Lena challenged, finding a strange, last reserve of fire. You let sentiment cloud your strategy. You betrayed the one man who trusted you. Sentiment is a weakness I sold long ago, Isabel replied, taking a measured step closer. Alexander Taylor believes he found loyalty in a gutter mouth cleaner. An ironic mistake, wouldn't you agree? Give me the book, Lena. We can end this quietly. You might even live long enough to see your sister again, provided she hasn't already been moved by one of Alexander's men. The final, desperate threat pushed Lena to her absolute breaking point. She was completely separated from Alexander, her sister was a bargaining chip, and the ruthless enemy was standing right in front of her. All Lena could do was buy time, relying on the slim hope that Alexander's promise, a promise forged in a moment of shared terror and passion, was real. I won't give you anything, Lena declared, stepping back into the deeper shadow of the boarded-up bakery entrance. The fire inside her was still burning, but it was dangerously close to being extinguished. This was her stand. This was her darkest hour. The line of separation was drawn, Lena, alone with the secret, facing Isabel and the full, deadly force of Victor Vega's network. The cold, determined look in Isabel Schuster's eyes was like staring into the abyss. 40 feet separated Lena from the traitor, but the distance felt infinite. Isabel was calculating, professional, and surrounded by unseen threats. Lena, standing exposed in the deep shadow of the abandoned bakery, was one wrong move away from oblivion. The ledger was a hot, terrifying weight under her shout. You're stalling, Lena, Isabel stated, her voice devoid of inflection. Alexander taught me that the moment of hesitation is the moment of failure. Give me the book, or I take you by force, and then I will find your sister. The mention of Stella was the spark Lena needed. It wasn't despair that flooded her, but a white-hot surge of protective rage, the pure, unadulterated fire Alexander had first seen in her eyes. Her fear of Isabel was eclipsed by her determination to protect her only family. She had been a cleaner, a servant of others' messes, but no longer. She was the protector of her own. You won't find her, Isabel, Lena shot back, her voice shaking slightly, but holding firm. And you won't get this book. You were sloppy. You let your ego cloud your vision. Alexander trusts me now, not you. He told me the cleaner takes out the trash, and I'm still standing. Isabel's composure cracked slightly. A flicker of genuine anger crossed her face. You know nothing of loyalty. You're a means to an end. Alexander will discard you the moment he secures the book. And you think Victor Vega will reward your loyalty? You're a liability now that Alexander knows, Lena retorted, deliberately hitting the nerve of Isabel's own fear of being discarded. As Lena spoke, she slowly, deliberately, reached into her back pocket and pulled out the burner phone. She held it in the center of her palm, her thumb hovering over the dial button. It was a bluff, a desperate move to spark Alexander's contingency plan. Isabel's eyes immediately locked onto the device. "Don't," Isabel commanded, taking her first hurried, non-measured step forward. "If you call him, Victor will execute your sister." "I'm not calling him, Isabel. I'm waiting for his confirmation," Lena lied, pushing the threat of Alexander's vast network. "He promised Stella would be safe before I made my next move. Until I get the code, this book stays with me." At that exact moment, the burner phone vibrated once, a short, sharp signal that resonated deep in Lena's chest. Alexander's men had secured Stella. The promise was kept. The crushing fear was lifted, replaced by a surge of incredible relief and courage. Alexander's loyalty was real. This was the turning point. Lena was no longer running from danger, she was actively, bravely confronting the threat, empowered by the knowledge that the man who held her life in his hands had prioritized the safety of her family above his own immediate needs. The romantic connection deepened from attraction to a profound, shared faith. As if on cue, a sudden, blinding flash of light exploded from the alleyway behind Isabel. It wasn't a weapon, it was the intense glare of a high-powered spotlight, a calculated distraction. In the ensuing chaos, a voice, low and familiar, cut through the night, not from a distance, but from the roof of the Bluebird Cafe itself. "Isabel. The game is over." Alexander Taylor stood silhouetted against the dark sky, having used the abandoned building's fire escape to flank the entire operation. He wasn't alone. Two dark figures dropped silently onto the street behind Isabel's sedan, moving with practiced stealth. They were Isabel's men, but now they were caught in Alexander's vice. Isabel spun around, momentarily blinded by the spotlight, her face contorted in disbelief. "Alexandros? How?" "I learned a valuable lesson tonight, Isabel," Alexander said, descending slowly, his voice calm, cold, and utterly devastating. "I was looking at the books, but I forgot to look at the people. You relied on my predictable order. You set up a simple perimeter with the rival faction, trusting that I would track them, not you. That was your sloppiness." As he spoke, he moved toward Lena, his eyes never leaving Isabel. The reunion was not a tender embrace, but an immediate, desperate action plan. "The book, Lena," Alexander ordered, reaching her side. "Victor Vega is moving his assets. We need to expose his entire network to the authorities before he can pin this on me." Lena immediately pulled the ledger from her shirt and thrust it into Alexander's waiting hands. "It's all here. Wills, Ethan," said Victor was financing his move through a shell company in the Cayman Islands. They were going to publish the book's details on a dark website as an insurance policy. Alexander, now holding the legendary ledger, glanced down at the open phone in Lena's hand. He saw the single, confirmed vibration. He looked at Lena, a face, silent understanding passing between them, the look of two people who had faced death and chosen to protect each other. "Liam is in position," he confirmed, his voice a low promise. "Stella is safe." He turned his full, terrible attention to Isabel, who was now trapped between Alexander's loyal enforcers and his strategic genius. "The key to solving the central conflict," Alexander declared, his voice ringing with authority, "was not the ledger itself, but the motive behind the betrayal. Isabel, you didn't betray me for money. You were leveraging wills to secure a debt. Victor Vega holds the original shipping container manifest for your family. The one that ties them to my father's original organization. He threatened to expose them." Isabel gasped, her perfect composure finally shattering. This was the painful, human truth behind the betrayal, a leverage point that had forced her hand. Alexander looked at Lena, a deep, complicated expression of regret and determination on his face. "Lena, you taught me that loyalty comes not from titles or family ties, but from authentic fire, the fight to protect those you love." The stage was set. Alexander had the ledger, the location of Victor Vega's assets, and the key to Isabel's motivation. He had his queen, the cleaner who had just called his bluff and survived. They were united, stronger, and ready for the final confrontation. Alexander placed a hand firmly on Lena's back, a gesture of shared resolve. "It's time to end this." We are going to expose Victor Vega. And you, Lena, are coming with me. You will be my proof. The cool night air of Queens became a crucible of intent. Alexander Taylor, the legendary capo, stood shoulder to shoulder with Lena Schuster, the fiery cleaner, facing the ruins of his trusted circle and the threat of Victor Vega's network. Alexander held the heavy ledger, but Lena held the truth, a cleaner's insight into the fundamental betrayal that drove the empire. Alexander's two loyal enforcers had secured Isabel, who stood rigid, her eyes fixed on the floor, her motivation revealed as tragic familial fear, not pure malice. Isabel's debt to Vega is leverage, not cash, Alexander explained to Lena, his voice low and tactical. Vega promised to keep her family's past buried in exchange for compromising me. Vega wants the ledger not for its money, but for the intellectual property, the highly encrypted algorithms my father developed to route our global legitimate shipments. If Vega gets those, he controls the entire shadow infrastructure of the city. Alexander's burner phone chirped once, a confirmation from his technical team. Victor Vega has moved his final assets to the old Naval Yard docks, Pier 7. His private jet is fueled. He's going to upload the ledger's contents to the dark web from the dock terminal, expose the system, and then vanish. The Naval Yard, Lena repeated, the words clicking into place. It's massive, open. He'll use the noise and confusion of the docks for cover. We're not going to fight his men on the docks, Lena. We're going to hit him where he's weakest, the legitimacy of his position, Alexander stated, a cold plan forming in his eyes. He looked at Lena. You're coming with me. Your presence is the single most important variable now. You are not just a witness, you are the human key to the entire operation. They arrived at the vast, desolate naval yard. The night was cold, loud with the groan of shipping cranes and the cry of gulls. Victor Vega's private jet glowed under the perimeter lights, a symbol of imminent escape. Alexander and Lena slipped past the main gate, disguised in the dark, nondescript clothing provided by the enforcers. They moved toward the main terminal office, where the lights were bright and Vega was certainly waiting. As they approached, a massive figure stepped out from the shadow of a shipping container, Victor Vega's chief enforcer, the scarred man Lena had encountered at level -2. Alexandros. The enforcer growled, recognizing Alexander instantly. You're too late. The plane is ready. And who is this? The cleaning lady? You bring a chambermaid to a gang war. Lena stepped forward, her fear dissolving into fierce defiance. She was tired of being the chambermaid, the ghost. She was Alexander's shield, his proof. I'm the one who stopped Wills, Lena challenged, her voice clear despite the roar of the wind. I'm the one who knew Isabel was feeding you information. You relied on Alexander's predictable moves, but you forgot about the people under your feet. You're sloppy, just like I told him. The enforcer's eyes widened slightly in surprise, confirming her connection to the level -2 incident. This was exactly the distraction Alexander needed. While the enforcer's attention was fixed on the unpredictable cleaner, Alexander moved with a blinding, brutal speed. He didn't pull a weapon. Instead, Alexander launched a calculated, non-lethal strike, targeting the enforcer's pressure points. The fight was quick, efficient, and over in seconds. Alexander subdued him with the precise, controlled violence of a man who dealt in power, not messy conflict. Never underestimate the ones who see the date you leave behind, Alexander murmured, dragging the unconscious man into the shadows. They reached the terminal office. Victor Vega stood inside, the ancient leather-bound ledger open on a high-tech console, his fingers poised over a key labeled Upload. Vega was impeccably dressed, a picture of calm confidence, but his eyes were darting nervously between the screen and the door. Alexander. I should have known you'd track the betrayal, but bringing the cleaner? Desperate, Vega sneered, not bothering to look up. It doesn't matter. In 10 seconds, this ledger is public, your world collapses, and I become the sole source of this technology. The ledger is worthless now, Victor, Alexander said, stepping fully into the light, Lena right behind him. Vega laughed. A bluff. I have the key data right here. You have a copy of the key data, Alexander corrected him, his voice dangerously calm. He nodded toward Lena. But you don't have the algorithm's authentication key. Lena stepped into the foreground, her stance resolute. This was the moment of her heroism. The key is a linguistic cipher, Lena revealed, her voice ringing with the final, surprising twist of the story. It's based on my grandmother's old baking recipes, the ones Stella and I spoke about. The key phrase Wills needed to activate the full code wasn't a number. It was sugar and dust. Alexander turned to Lena, his eyes blazing with admiration and understanding. He had shared the full scope of the encryption with her the moment they were safe at the brownstone, not just the details of Wills's movements. He realized that the linguistic key was woven into the ledger structure and linked to the only authentic code he knew, Lena's life. The authentic key phrase is a childhood memory of mine, recorded in the liner notes of the ledger's first copy, Alexander explained to a now furious Vega. A note only my father, Wills, Ethan, and I ever knew. Wills changed the phrase on the public-facing ledger to sugar and dust, Lena's secret phrase to her sister, to protect the real data before he turned traitor. He put a red herring inside his own betrayal. Vega slammed his hand on the desk. A cleaner's sentiment? You trust this whore with your most important asset. Alexander moved with startling suddenness. He didn't answer Vega. He walked straight to Lena and pulled her into a fierce, protective embrace, a profound, public declaration of their bond and his absolute trust. She is my proof of authenticity, Alexander stated, his voice resonating with finality. Victor, the algorithm has a self-destruct mechanism. It activates if the wrong cipher, your copied data, is uploaded. Alexander pulled out a heavy-duty satellite phone, not the burner, but a military-grade device. He spoke 2 rapid words, execute beta 2. A red light flashed rapidly on Vega's console. An urgent voice screamed from the internal speaker, warning. External system conflict. Data integrity compromise. Vega watched in horror as his entire screen went black. His copy of the ledger's data, his investment, his ultimate weapon, was destroyed. Alexander had leveraged Lena's intimate knowledge and Wills's final, unexpected act of confused loyalty to neutralize the threat. Alexander released Lena, his hand moving instantly to secure the original ledger. He looked at Vega, who was now a beaten, desperate man. You wanted to destroy my organization with betrayal, Victor. Instead, you taught me that the truest loyalty is found in the unlikely places, Alexander said. At that moment, the final, satisfying twist occurred. The sound of sirens blared from the main gate. I didn't call the police, Victor, Alexander revealed, a thin, ruthless smile touching his lips. I called the Federal Shipping Authority. That private jet is registered under 3 false names. The cargo manifest you just destroyed contained enough evidence to put you away for corporate espionage and international smuggling. I'm letting the law clean up my legitimate business mess. Your war ends not with a gunshot, but with an indictment. Alexander looked at Lena, the victory in his eyes undeniable, shared. He hadn't just defeated his enemy, he had done so cleanly, strategically, using his greatest strength, Lena's unpredictable honesty and courage. As the authorities swarmed the dock, Alexander took Lena's hand, his grip firm and possessive. The triumphant relief washed over them. They had survived, not as boss and employee, but as partners in survival and strategy. You were extraordinary, Lena, Alexander said, his voice laced with emotion. You saw the details no one else did. You saved my empire. Lena smiled, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. You taught me that paying attention to the scuffs on the shoes can save your life, Alexander. And you kept your promise to Stella. They walked away from the chaos of the climactic resolution, the ledger secure, Victor Vega apprehended, and Isabel's fate, a complicated matter of family debt, left in Alexander's now more merciful, complex hands. The final step was to ensure the emotional conclusion of their unexpected journey. The cold light of dawn was breaking over the city as Alexander and Lena left the chaos of the naval yard behind. The legitimate legal mess, Vega's arrest and the seizure of his illegal assets, was now the focus of the authorities. Alexander's hands were clean, his reputation subtly reinforced by his cooperation in dismantling a rival operation. He had used the law to fight his underworld war and emerged not only victorious but ethically justified in the eyes of the public. He ruled from the shadows. They returned to the quiet sanctuary of the brownstone, the heavy ledger now locked securely in the safe. The air of danger had dissipated, replaced by the profound, exhausted peace of shared survival. Lena had changed. She was no longer defined by her blue uniform and her struggle for visibility. She had faced down a crime boss and an assassin, and in the process, realized her own formidable intelligence and courage. Alexander had seen her not just as a cleaner, but as the authentic strategist his world desperately needed. Alexander, too, was irrevocably changed. His meticulous order had been tested by chaos, and he learned that trust and loyalty were not things to be demanded through fear, but earned through genuine respect and vulnerability. His decision to prioritize Stella's safety over the immediate recovery of the ledger had sealed his redemption in Lena's eyes, proving he was capable of a greater, more protective kind of power. The immediate, difficult task was the resolution of the betrayal. Isabel, his cousin, was still held in a secure location. Victor Vega is finished, Alexander told Lena as they sat in the quiet study. He cannot touch Isabel or her family anymore. She didn't betray me for profit, she betrayed me to protect her family's past. That is a kind of loyalty, misplaced though it was. Alexander's ultimate decision was not vengeance, but justice tempered by kinship. I won't let her be discarded. Her knowledge is too dangerous to fall into other hands. I've arranged for her and her immediate family to vanish, a new life in a territory where she can manage legitimate operations, cut off completely from my current infrastructure. She will answer only to me. It's exile, not execution. She deserves a clean slate, just as I hope for one. It was a ruthless but merciful resolution, demonstrating Alexander's evolution from a cold capo of order to a complex leader of justice and protection. The romantic subplot, born of conflict and shared vulnerability, now needed its earned conclusion. Alexander looked at Lena, the exhaustion etched on her face, but the fire still bright in her eyes. Lena Schuster, he said, his voice dropping to the low, resonant tone that had first captivated her. You called me sloppy, and you saved my life. You forced me to see the details, the human ones, that I had overlooked for years. He stood and extended his hand to her. The triple bonus is deposited, and the money for the Hobart mixer is waiting. You are free to go. You can have your bakery, your quiet life, your sister back. I promised you survival, and I have delivered it. Lena took his hand, her palm rough from years of cleaning, his palm smooth and strong from years of command. And what about you, Alexander? The quiet one in penthouse 1802. What happens to the capo who learned he needs chaos to thrive? Alexander didn't release her hand. Instead, he pulled her closer, the intimacy of the action undeniable. I realized something at the naval yard. I don't need a cleaner, Lena. I need a partner. The strategic oversight, the ability to see the small, crucial detail, that is power in my world. My world is complex, Lena, but it requires two things: order in the strategy, and authenticity in the loyalty. He looked into her eyes, the protective instinct dominating his features. I need you to stay. Not as an employee, but as my most trusted advisor. The one person who will look at my shoes, call me sloppy, and tell me the truth. I need you in my life, Lena. My world is safer with your fire. This was the proposal, not for marriage, but for a life-altering partnership, a merger of their two disparate worlds. Lena smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that lit up the dimly lit study. The bakery dream was her safety net, but standing beside Alexander was her true, realized power. She had already chosen this path when she ran to the abandoned cafe. I won't be polishing your shoes, Alexander, she said, her voice firm. But I will make sure they never get scuffed in the first place. You have my loyalty. Schuster's Sweet Surrender opened its doors in a sunlit corner of a revitalized Astoria street. It was small, painted a cheerful yellow, and its windows were filled with the golden glow of fresh-baked goods. Lena, no longer in the pale blue uniform, stood proudly behind the counter, a custom-ordered Hobart mixer humming softly in the back. Stella was by her side, beaming, no longer afraid. The money for the bakery had come with an unexpected, final investment. Alexander had purchased the building and put the deed in Stella's name, a final, concrete symbol of his commitment to Lena's future and her family's security. A long, black sedan pulled up outside. Alexander Taylor stepped out, impeccably dressed, but with a slight, genuine smile on his face. He wasn't the capo here, he was just Alexander. He walked in, the bell above the door chiming softly. He moved past the queue of customers, his eyes finding Lena's. He didn't ask for a favor or a strategy report. The almond biscotti, Alexander requested, a flicker of true warmth in his eyes. The one your grandmother used to make. It's the only sweet thing I've ever genuinely enjoyed. Lena slid a piece across the counter, her fingers brushing his. It's authentic, Alexander. Just like the truth. He took a bite, savoring the flavor of sugar and dust, of victory and new beginnings. They were partners, lovers, and strategists, navigating the complex intersection of power and passion. Lena had traded a cleaning trolley for a powerful seat at the table, proving that sometimes, the greatest strength is found in the fire of a woman who refuses to be invisible. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what your favorite moment of defiance was in the comments below. Also like, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any stories like this.